This presentation discusses the following: summary of the God Stealer, the concepts that people across the world, specifically Philippines to Japan, may consider, social class, filial relationship, and colonial mentality.
The God Stealer. The God Stealer is a short story written by a Filipino national artist named Francesco Chanel Jose. This is not just a tale of an Ifugao stealing religious idol, but also about the friendship that developed between the American and the Filipino. And at the same time, it is about the representation of a relationship between the influenced and the influencer. Now this time, please help me to understand the summary of this story. The story begins with two close friends, an urbanized Ifugao man and an American businessman. Philip and Sam will be riding a bus heading to Ifugao. They are heading to Ifugao for one purpose. Sam wants to buy a genuine Ifugao god as a souvenir, and Philip was to help him to find an authentic one through his local connections. Philip is a Christian who no longer has any respect or affection for the Ifugao customs and religion. He considered himself a city boy and no inclination to return to mountains life. Despite this attitude, his grandfather is pleased to see him and decides to throw a big party in his honor. On that day, Sam and Philip discover that no Ifugao is willing to sell their god. And as a last resort, Philip offers to steal the god of his grandfather because he feels that would be his way of showing his gratitude to Sam for giving him a rise at work.
The consequence of this act is more severe.
On the next day, his grandfather died because he discovered that his god has been stolen. He also informed Sam that Philip will no longer be going back to Manila.
Curious, Sam looks for Philip and finds him working in his grandfather's house, a faltering and suffered job in the dark hut. Sam noticed that Philip is now attired in G-string, that traditional costume of the Ifugao.
I could forgive myself for having stolen it, but the old man, he had always been wise, Sam. He knew that it was I who did it from the very start. He wanted so much to believe that it wasn't I, but he couldn't pretend, and neither can I. I killed him, Sam. I killed him because I wanted to be free from these cursed races, because I wanted to be grateful. I killed him who loved me most, he says.
Furthermore, Philip is busy carving another idol, a new god to replace the old one, which Sam will take over to America as a souvenir.
That was the summary of The God Stealer by Francesco Chanel Jose. In conclusion, or to wrap up it all, Philip's repudiation of his Ifugao heritage may be extrapolated to that Filipinos' rejections of his own roots and its replacement with the colonial values.
Lessons from the God Stealer. Respect the elders. Value and respect your place of origin and your own identity. Value your family. Since we have already discussed the summary of the God Stealer, now let's proceed to task number 2, which is all about the concept that people across the globe may consider through social class, filial relationship, and colonial mentality. With this task, we chose Japan as a country that we're going to compare and contrast from our country, which is the Philippines. So, Stay tuned and keep on watching.
Well, hello guys. At this very moment, I will be discussing or talking about my designated topic, which is about the social class, the Philippines and Japan country. Now, in Philippines, contrary to popular belief, social class is more than just about how much money you're making. Sociologists define social class as a group of people with similar socioeconomic status or standing within the society based on the level of income, education, and occupation. When talking about income inequality in the Philippines, the discussion would always focus on the poor and rich divide. But now, in the time of COVID-19 and the government imposed lockdown, it has shifted to the poor versus a middle class. Social classes range from low to high and often reveal inequalities in terms of power, influence, and access to resources. There are types of social classes in the Philippines. Three primary social classes exist in Philippines are the low-income class, the middle-income class, and the high-income class. The latest Family Income and Expenditure Survey by the Philippine Statistic Authority or PSA shows that majority 58.4% of Filipinos belong to the low-income class, while the middle class comprises around 40% of the population and only 1.4% fall in the high income class. That's for the Philippines. While when we're talking about in Japanese, there's a certain things in culture in Japanese. Culturally inspired operations in detail sufficient to provide happy labors for generations of folklorists, ethnologists, and rural sociologists. Japan was remarkably homogeneous from one end of the islands to the other. The Japanese were aware of themselves as a unified people. They are unified people. Some observers would contend that even today, cultural homogeneity is a distinctive characteristic of Japan, despite obvious individual differences. Runs one typical statement of this kind: every Japanese has resembled every other Japanese much more closely than Americans or Europeans individuals have resembled their compatriots. Although the stress on democracy after World War II fostered the individual differences, Japan's population continues to be less diversified than Occidental populations.
Good day everyone, my name is Marlene J. Calape and I am going to share about the filial relationship of Japanese and Filipino cultures. First, I will share about their wedding ceremony. For the Japanese, they wear a kimono and hakama during the wedding, and the cold miko helps the bride. They have a tea ceremony, and the wedding place is the shrine. The Shinto priest conducts the ceremony of the Japanese wedding, while the Filipinos, they wear a white gown and a suit. The bridesmaid helps the bride. There are doves and a bouquet of flowers. The wedding place is, of course, the church, and the Christian priest conducts the ceremony during the wedding. Next is their way of dating. For the Japanese, they have Valentine's Day and White Day. Then they have group dates called Gokon. And during New Year, they go to shrines and girls go with their kimonos, usually at the amusement parks. And the couple would split the bill. while Filipinos only have Valentine's Day. And they also have double date or gathering. And during New Year, the couple would visit each other's families and eat with them, usually at the mall or watch a movie. And the guy would pay for the date. So next is the their greetings. So the Japanese usually bows to their elders. They call others with their last name. While the Filipinos, close female friends may hug and kiss, or also called biso, when they greet, while close male friends may hug each other and tap their backs or just by a handshake. So that is all the connections for the filial relationship of the Japanese and Filipino cultures. Thank you for listening.
So, good day everyone. The next concept would be about colonial mentality. So, what is colonial mentality? Colonial mentality is the internalized attitude of ethnic or cultural inferiority felt by people as a result of colonization. So, in other words, being colonized by another group. So, it corresponds with the belief that the cultural values of the colonizer are inherently superior to one's own. So, we choose Japan country para differentiate or compare the colonial mentality here in the Philippines. So, here we differentiate the Philippines. So the differences between the Philippines and Japan. In education is here in Philippines, education is influenced by Western culture, which is more fluent in universal language, which is the English. While in Japan, educational system is influenced by the Chinese culture. So the form of government here in Philippines obviously is a presidential system, while in Japan is a parliamentary system. Parliamentary system is a democratic form of government. So here in Philippines, Catholicism is influenced by Spanish, where most Filipinos had peacefully accepted the faith, while in Japan, majority of the religion is Buddhism, which is influenced by the Chinese.